AITA for telling my siblings I don't want to split the bill equally since they have kids and I don't. So, I'm the youngest in my family, with two older sisters who are both in their 30s. I'm still in my 20s, and while we're close, there's always been this underlying tension when it comes to money. My sisters both have families each with 2 kids while I'm single and child-free. Now, this wouldn't be an issue, except when it comes to splitting bills. And let me tell you, it's always an issue. This year, for Mother's Day, my sisters suggested we take our mom out for lunch. Great idea, right? We could all get together, celebrate, and enjoy a nice meal. But here's where it gets tricky. As soon as they suggested it, they started talking about splitting the bill 3 ways, equally. Now, this isn't the first time we've done something like this, and it's definitely not the first time I've had a problem with it. But this time, I couldn't just sit back and say nothing. I've been down this road before, family dinners, holidays, vacations, you name it. Whenever we go out, the bill gets split evenly among us, even though my sisters bring along their husbands and kids. I've been keeping my mouth shut for a long time now, but this time, I couldn't do it. It just didn't seem fair to me that I should be expected to split the bill equally when I'm only paying for myself and my mom, while they're paying for themselves, their spouses, and their kids. So, I brought it up. I told them that I didn't think it was fair to split the bill 3 ways since their kids would be eating too. And let me be clear, these kids aren't toddlers who are going to nibble at a piece of bread and call it a day. One of them is almost 18, for crying out loud. They're ordering full meals, drinks, desserts, the whole 9 yards. So, I suggested that we split the bill in a way that actually reflects who's eating. As soon as the words left my mouth, I could feel the temperature in the room drop. My sisters immediately got defensive, accusing me of being confrontational and making a big deal out of nothing. They said it was just a family meal and that we shouldn't be nitpicking over who ate what. But to me, it wasn't about nitpicking. It was about fairness. I'm not trying to be cheap, I just don't think it's right for me to cover a portion of their kids' meals when I'm only paying for myself and our mom. Things got worse when my mom found out. Somehow, she always manages to find out about these things, and as usual, she took their side. She said I was making a mountain out of a molehill and that I should just let it go for the sake of keeping the peace. But the thing is, I've been letting it go for years now, and I'm tired of it. I'm tired of feeling like I'm being taken advantage of just because I don't have kids. To give you some more background, this isn't the first time something like this has happened. A couple of years ago, we went on a family trip. The plan was that my mom, one of my sisters, and I would split the costs 3 ways. Now, I assumed this meant we were splitting the costs of the accommodations and maybe some group activities, but when we got there, it quickly became clear that my sister was including her husband and kids in this arrangement. So, there I was, paying 1/3 of the cost for a trip that included her entire family. My mom noticed too, but she begged me to keep quiet about it to avoid starting a fight. So, I did. I swallowed my frustration, kept my mouth shut, and paid my share. But it left a bad taste in my mouth, and it's been lingering ever since. This whole Mother's Day situation just brought all those feelings back to the surface. I've been holding my tongue for so long, trying to keep the peace, but I'm at a point where I just can't anymore. It's not even about the money, really it's about the principle. I feel like my sisters are taking advantage of the situation, expecting me to foot a bill that includes their kids when I'm not the one who decided to have kids in the first place. It's not like I'm refusing to pay my share, I just don't think it's fair for me to cover theirs too. So, after that whole Mother's Day fiasco, things were tense between my sisters and me. I could feel the tension simmering under the surface, and honestly, I wasn't sure how to deal with it. My mom kept her usual stance of keep the peace, while my sisters seemed to be silently fuming. But I stood my ground, I wasn't about to let this go unnoticed, not this time. A few weeks passed, and the dust seemed to settle a bit. My sisters and I weren't as chatty in our family group chat, but we were still cordial enough. Then, out of the blue, one of them suggested we all get together again. This time, it was for a weekend dinner at a fairly nice restaurant in town, the kind of place where the appetizers alone could set you back a decent amount. The invite was extended to our mom, of course, and naturally, my sisters were bringing their families along. I could already see where this was going, but I didn't want to jump to conclusions just yet. I decided to give it the benefit of the doubt, hoping maybe this time they'd be more considerate about splitting the bill, given how things went down last time. Maybe they'd finally understand where I was coming from. The day of the dinner rolled around, and we all showed up at the restaurant. It was one of those cozy, dimly lit places with a warm ambience. The kind of place that feels welcoming but also makes you aware that you're about to drop some serious cash. My sisters arrived with their husbands and kids in tow, and I could already tell the kids were excited. They were talking about all the different things they wanted to order: steak, pasta, dessert, you name it. We were seated at a large table near the back of the restaurant. The waiter handed out menus, and as everyone started looking over the options, I glanced around, trying to gauge the vibe. My sisters were chatting with their husbands, the kids were debating over which dessert they'd get, and my mom was her usual quiet self, sitting at the head of the table. I couldn't help but notice that there was no mention of how the bill would be split. I felt that familiar pit in my stomach but decided to wait it out. Maybe they were just waiting until later to bring it up. The evening progressed smoothly enough. We ordered appetizers, main courses, and drinks. The kids were in high spirits, and the conversation flowed easily. I made sure to order something modest, nothing too fancy or expensive, because I knew where this was heading. I noticed that my sisters and their families weren't holding back. Steaks, cocktails, extra sides, and, of course, the kids were getting whatever they wanted. By the time dessert rolled around, I was already bracing myself for what was coming. When the waiter finally brought the check, he placed it in the middle of the table, a gesture that felt almost ceremonial. My heart started racing a bit as I waited for someone to say something. My older sister reached for the check first, took a quick glance at it, and then passed it to my other sister, who did the same. Finally, they looked at each other, then at me, and I could tell they were about to drop the "let's split it 3 ways" bomb. "So, I guess we'll just split it 3 ways again," my older sister said, almost casually, as if we hadn't just gone through this whole ordeal weeks earlier. I looked at them, and I could feel the frustration bubbling up inside me. I knew if I said something, it would probably turn into another argument, but at the same time, I couldn't just let it slide. Not again. I had made my point clear before, and I wasn't about to back down. So, I did what I thought was the only fair thing to do. I asked to see the bill. My sisters exchanged a quick look but handed it over. I scanned the itemized list, mentally noting what I had ordered, as well as what my mom had eaten. I pulled out my phone and did some quick calculations, making sure I had accounted for everything I needed to pay for. "Actually," I said, trying to keep my tone as neutral as possible, "I'm going to pay for just my meal and Mom's. You guys can split the rest however you want." The table went silent. My sisters just stared at me, clearly taken aback by what I had said. I could see their husbands looking at each other, probably wondering if they should say something. The kids, oblivious to the tension, were still talking about dessert. My mom, bless her heart, just sighed and looked down at her hands, clearly not wanting to get involved. "You're serious?" my other sister finally said, her voice tinged with disbelief. "You're just going to pay for yourself and Mom?" "Yeah," I replied, keeping my voice steady. "That's what I think is fair." There was a pause, a long, awkward pause. I could tell they didn't know how to respond. This wasn't the outcome they had expected, and now they were faced with having to actually split the cost of their own meals and their kids' meals. After what felt like an eternity, they finally nodded, albeit reluctantly. "Fine," my older sister said, a bit of an edge in her voice, "if that's what you want." I didn't say anything else. I just counted out the cash for my portion, left it on the table, and excused myself to go to the bathroom. When I came back, the tension was still thick in the air, but the check had been settled. We all left the restaurant shortly after, with barely a word exchanged between us. The car ride home was quiet, and I couldn't help but wonder if I had made the right choice or if I had just driven a bigger wedge between us. The next day, I got a call from one of my sisters. I knew this conversation was coming, but I wasn't exactly looking forward to it. When I answered, she didn't waste any time getting to the point. "You really embarrassed us last night," she said, her tone a mix of anger and frustration. "I don't know why you had to make such a big deal out of it. It's not like we're asking you to pay for our kids just to split the bill evenly like we always do." I took a deep breath, trying to keep my cool. "It's not about making a big deal," I said. "It's about fairness. I'm paying for myself and Mom. I don't think it's right for me to cover part of your kids' meals when I'm not the one who decided to have kids." "We're family," she shot back. "Family helps each other out. It's not about who ordered what or who has kids. It's about being together and sharing the costs." "I get that," I replied, trying to keep my voice calm, "but it doesn't feel like sharing when I'm paying for more than what I ordered. I'm not saying I don't want to help out or be part of the family, I just think we should all pay for what we actually ordered." There was a pause on the other end of the line, and I could tell she was trying to find the right words to say. Finally, she sighed. "Look, I get where you're coming from, but you have to understand that it just makes things awkward when you do stuff like that. We're used to splitting things evenly, and when you break it down like that, it just feels like you're being petty." I didn't know how to respond to that. To me, it wasn't about being petty, it was about standing up for what I felt was fair. But clearly, they saw it differently. "I'm not trying to make things awkward," I said after a moment. "I just want to make sure we're all being fair to each other." She didn't say much after that. We wrapped up the conversation, but I could tell she was still upset. I was left with this nagging feeling that maybe I was the one who had messed up, even though I believed I had done the right thing. After that conversation with my sister, I was left stewing for days. The more I thought about it, the more it gnawed at me. It wasn't just the money, it was the principle, the expectation that I should just keep quiet and go along with what they wanted, even if it wasn't fair. I kept replaying her words in my head. We're family. Family helps each other out, but wasn't fairness supposed to be part of that equation, too? Wasn't it supposed to be a two-way street? I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being cornered, that my sisters were using the whole family angle as a way to get what they wanted without considering my perspective. The more I thought about it, the angrier I got. If they wanted to play the we're family, so we split everything equally card, then maybe it was time for me to show them what that really meant. The idea hit me out of nowhere, but once it did, I couldn't let it go. I was going to turn the tables on them, see how they liked it when the shoe was on the other foot. If they were so insistent on splitting the bill 3 ways, then I was going to bring in a few reinforcements of my own. A couple of weeks later, my older sister texted me, asking if we were all free for another family dinner. This time, it was for my mom's birthday, and she suggested going to this upscale Italian restaurant that had just opened up downtown. The kind of place where you have to make a reservation weeks in advance and the wine list is longer than the food menu. Perfect, I thought. This was exactly the kind of setting I needed. I agreed to the dinner, but this time, I had a plan. I reached out to a few of my closest friends, people who I knew wouldn't say no to a free meal, especially at a place like this. I explained the situation to them, and they were all too happy to play along. I told them to order whatever they wanted, no holding back. This was going to be my little experiment in fairness. The night of the dinner arrived, and I showed up at the restaurant with my entourage in tow. I could see the surprise on my sisters' faces when they realized I hadn't come alone. There were 5 of us altogether, myself and my 4 friends, compared to their usual party of 6. My mom, as always, tried to keep things pleasant, but I could see the curiosity in her eyes, wondering what was going on. "Hey, everyone," I greeted them with a big smile, acting like nothing was out of the ordinary. "I hope you don't mind, but I invited a few friends to join us tonight. I figured it would be nice to have a bigger group for Mom's birthday. The more, the merrier, right?" My sisters exchanged glances, clearly unsure of how to respond. Their husbands looked equally puzzled, and the kids seemed to be more interested in the menu than the new faces at the table. I could tell my sisters were trying to stay polite, but I knew this wasn't what they had in mind. Sure," my older sister finally said, forcing a smile. "The more, the merrier." We all took our seats, with my friends mingling in seamlessly, chatting with everyone as if they'd known them for years. The waiter came over, handed out the menus, and took our drink orders. My friends didn't hold back. They started ordering the most expensive cocktails on the menu, and I could see my sister's eyes widen slightly as they realized what was happening. I kept the conversation light, trying to keep things as normal as possible. We talked about work, life, and everything in between, but all the while, I could see my sisters growing more and more uncomfortable as my friends kept ordering. Appetizers, main courses, sides, desserts. They didn't skip a beat, and I didn't either. I ordered whatever I wanted, just like my friends, enjoying the looks on my sisters' faces as the orders piled up. By the time we got to dessert, I could tell my sisters were getting anxious. They knew the bill was going to be massive, and I could see them whispering to each other, probably trying to figure out what to do. But I played it cool, pretending like I hadn't noticed a thing. Finally, the waiter brought the check, placing it in the center of the table. My older sister hesitated, but eventually, she reached for it, just like she always did. I could see her scanning the bill, her eyes widening slightly as she took in the total. She passed it to my other sister, who had a similar reaction. They both looked at me, and I could see the unspoken question in their eyes. What now? So, I guess we'll just split it 3 ways again, right? I said, mimicking my sister's words from the last dinner. I kept my tone casual, almost nonchalant, but inside, I was savoring the moment. The silence that followed was deafening. My sisters looked at each other, then at me, and I could see the wheels turning in their heads. They were cornered. If they agreed to split the bill 3 ways, they'd be paying for a huge chunk of the meal that my friends who they hadn't invited had ordered. But if they didn't, they'd have to admit that maybe, just maybe, the way they'd been splitting things before wasn't as fair as they thought. My older sister was the first to speak. Well, I mean, it's a pretty big bill, and your friends ordered a lot. Maybe we should, I don't know, split it differently this time. Oh, come on, I replied, keeping my voice light. We've always split things 3 ways. We're family, right? Family helps each other out. I watched as the realization hit them. This was exactly what I had been saying all along, but now, they were on the receiving end of it. They were the ones being asked to pay more than their fair share, and they didn't like it one bit. My other sister cleared her throat, trying to sound reasonable. Maybe we should just split it based on what everyone ordered. That might be more fair, considering the circumstances. I leaned back in my chair, acting as if I was thinking it over. I guess we could do that. But I mean, that's not how we usually do things. Are you sure? I could see the frustration in their eyes, but they were stuck. They knew they couldn't argue without looking like hypocrites, so they reluctantly agreed. Yeah, I think that's probably the best way to do it, my older sister said, her tone resigned. We'll split it based on what everyone ordered. All right, I said, pretending to be accommodating, if that's what you want. We spent the next few minutes going over the bill, dividing it up based on what each person had ordered. My friends, who had been silently enjoying the show, pitched in their share without complaint. When it was all said and done, my portion ended up being significantly smaller than it would have been if we'd split it evenly, and my sisters ended up paying more than they had anticipated. But it was all fair, exactly what they had asked for. We wrapped up the evening, and as we left the restaurant, I could tell my sisters were still processing what had happened. They tried to keep things friendly, but I knew they were annoyed. My mom, who had stayed quiet throughout the whole thing, gave me a look that said she knew exactly what I had done, but she didn't say anything. She just gave me a small smile, as if to say, I see you. The ride home was quiet, and I couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction. I had made my point, and I knew my sisters wouldn't forget it anytime soon. I wasn't sure if it would change anything in the long run, but at least now they knew how it felt to be on the other side. The next day, I got another call from my older sister. I figured she would want to talk about what had happened, and I wasn't wrong. So, about last night, she started, her tone hesitant. Was that really necessary, bringing all those friends along just to make a point? I sighed, knowing this was coming. Look, I'm not trying to be a jerk. I just wanted you to see what it feels like. You've been asking me to split bills equally, even when it's not fair, and I'm tired of it. I wanted to show you that it's not right to expect someone to pay more than their share just because we're family." She was silent for a moment, and I could tell she was thinking it over. "I get what you're saying," she finally admitted. "But you didn't have to go to such extremes. We could have just talked about it." "We've tried talking about it," I pointed out. "But every time I bring it up, I'm told to just go along with it because we're family. I needed to show you what it's like." There was another pause, and then she sighed. "All right, fine. I get it. Maybe we haven't been fair to you. But can we try to find a middle ground next time, without the theatrics?" I couldn't help but smile a little. "Yeah, we can do that. I just want things to be fair, that's all." "Okay," she said, sounding a bit more relaxed. "We'll figure it out, but no more surprises like last night, okay?" "Deal," I agreed, feeling a sense of relief. So, here I am, stuck in this awkward situation with my family, trying to figure out if I'm the asshole for not wanting to split the bill equally when I don't have kids to account for. It feels like no matter what I do, someone ends up getting hurt, and I'm left wondering if I should have just sucked it up again for the sake of keeping the peace. But at the same time, I don't want to keep being the one who compromises just to avoid conflict. Am I the asshole for standing my ground and only paying for what I ordered? Or should I have just gone along with what they wanted, even if it didn't feel fair to me?